Hello friends. I can see 90% of my viewers don't subscribe while watching videos. Please hit the subscribe button and like this video. Press that bell icon for notifications. And tell me in the comments from which city you are watching this video. I am about to tell you a story that will shake you to your core. A story of betrayal, determination, and the sweetest revenge you have ever heard. My name is Maya Sterling, and this is how I turned the most crushing rejection of my life into the ultimate victory. The squeak of sneakers against polished hardwood still echoes in my nightmares. Even now, 15 years later, I can close my eyes and hear that sound. The sound of dreams being crushed beneath the weight of one man's cruel indifference. High school was supposed to be my launching pad. Basketball was not just a game to me. It was everything. It was the rhythm of my heartbeat, the air in my lungs, the fire that burned in my chest every single morning when I woke up. I was not the tallest girl on the team. Hell, I was barely 5'6" in my best sneakers. I was not the fastest either. But what I lacked in natural gifts, I made up for with something far more dangerous. Pure, unrelenting obsession. While other girls were sleeping in on weekends, I was in the gym at 6 a.m., shooting free throws until my arms ached, running suicides until my legs gave out, studying game film until my eyes burned. I lived and breathed basketball. It consumed every fiber of my being. Coach Rick Donnelly saw none of that. To him, I was just another mediocre player taking up space on his roster, a bench warmer, a charity case he had to tolerate because the school required a certain number of players per team. The first time he broke my heart was during tryouts senior year. I had spent the entire summer preparing, shooting thousands of shots, running miles every single day. I was ready, but when the roster went up on his office door, my name was dead last. Number 15 out of 15. The clear message was obvious. I barely made the team at all. Still, I convinced myself it was just the beginning, that I would prove him wrong, that my dedication would speak louder than his doubts. I was so naive. Game after game, I sat on that bench, watching, waiting, praying for my chance. During practice, I would outwork everyone. I would dive for every loose ball, fight for every rebound, make every extra pass. But when Friday night came, when the lights were bright and the stands were packed, Coach Donnelly would look right through me. The worst part was not just being benched. It was the way he would smirk when I tried too hard. The way he would roll his eyes when I asked questions. The way he would make little comments designed to chip away at my confidence. Sterling, you are trying too hard again. Just relax and let the real players handle this. Maybe you should focus on being a manager instead. Some people are just not meant to be on the court. But the words that destroyed me, the words that still haunt me to this day, came during the biggest game of our season. We were playing our crosstown rivals for the district championship. The gym was packed. College scouts filled the stands. This was it. This was the moment every high school athlete dreams of. And I was glued to the bench. Again. We were down by 12 points going into the fourth quarter. Our starting point guard had fouled out. Our backup was cramping up. The team was falling apart. I stood up, heart pounding, hands shaking. This was my moment. Finally, Coach put me in. I am ready. Rick Donnelly looked at me for what felt like an eternity. Then, in front of the entire team, the entire crowd, he said the words that would change my life forever. Leah, you are just not cut out to lead a team. Sit down and let me handle this. The gymnasium went quiet. My teammates stared at the floor. The crowd shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But inside me, something snapped. Not broke. Snapped. Like a rubber band stretched too far. Too long. Finally giving way to explosive force. In that moment, I made a decision that would define the rest of my life. I was not going to let this man's opinion determine my worth. I was not going to let his narrow vision limit my potential. If Rick Donnelly would not let me lead on the court, then I would find another way to lead. We lost that game by 23 points. I never played another organized basketball game again. But my real game, the one that mattered, was just beginning. College was a blur of textbooks and determination. while my former teammates were getting recruited to play at universities across the country. I was studying sports management with the intensity of a woman possessed. I devoured every book about athletic administration, every case study about successful franchises, every biography of sports executives who had built empires from nothing. My professors thought I was crazy. Who studies sports business with this level of obsession? Who spends their weekends analyzing salary cap structures and revenue-sharing models? Someone with a score to settle. That is who. I was not just learning. I was preparing. Building an arsenal of knowledge that would one day make Rick Donnelly's dismissive smirk disappear forever. During my sophomore year, I started working part-time at the local arena. Minimum wage. Sweeping floors and cleaning bathrooms. But I had access to something invaluable. The inner workings of professional sports. I watched everything. Learned everything. Asked questions until the managers got tired of hearing my voice. How do player contracts really work? What drives ticket sales? How do successful franchises build their brands? What makes fans loyal to a team for decades? Every menial task was a learning opportunity. Every conversation with executives was a masterclass in business strategy. By my junior year, I was not just cleaning bathrooms anymore. I was helping with marketing campaigns, assisting with sponsorship negotiations, learning the language of big business. And I was good at it. Really good. The executives started noticing. They started giving me bigger responsibilities, real projects that actually mattered. But more importantly, I started noticing patterns, opportunities, gaps in the market that nobody else was seeing. There were talented athletes everywhere who were being overlooked, players who did not fit the traditional mold, who were too small or too slow or too unconventional for scouts to appreciate. Sound familiar? After graduation, I used my arena connections to land a job with a small sports agency. The pay was terrible. The hours were brutal. But it was my foot in the door. My specialty became finding diamonds in the rough. Athletes who had been dismissed by everyone else. Players who reminded me of, well, me. My first client was a point guard who had been cut from his college team for being too aggressive, too emotional, too intense. Every other agent passed on him. They said he was damaged goods. A headache waiting to happen. I saw something different. I saw hunger, drive. The same fire that had burned in me when Coach Donnelly kept me on the bench. Within 6 months, I had gotten him signed to a professional contract overseas. Within a year, he was starting for a team in Europe. Within 2 years, he was back in the United States playing professional basketball. Other agents started paying attention. Athletes started seeking me out. My client list grew. My reputation grew. My bank account grew. But most importantly, my power grew. Underscore 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 underscore. Building a sports agency from nothing is like constructing a skyscraper with your bare hands. Every client requires months of relationship building. Every contract involves weeks of brutal negotiation. Every success is built on the foundation of dozens of failures. But I had something that most agents did not have. I had been exactly where my clients were. I knew what it felt like to be dismissed, overlooked, told you were not good enough. That connection made all the difference. When I sat across from a young athlete who had been cut from their high school team, I could look them in the eye and say, I know exactly how you feel. And I know exactly how to prove them wrong. My agency specialized in second chances, in finding opportunities for players that everyone else had given up on. We placed athletes in overseas leagues, in developmental programs, in semi-professional teams that served as stepping stones to bigger opportunities. But more than just finding them contracts, I taught them the business side of sports, how to market themselves, how to build their personal brands, how to think like entrepreneurs instead of just athletes. Because I had learned something crucial during those years working minimum wage jobs at the arena. Sports is not just about talent. It is about business. It is about relationships. It is about understanding the system and learning how to manipulate it to your advantage. My clients were not just signing contracts. They were building empires. And so was I. By my 30th birthday, my agency represented over 200 athletes across multiple sports. We were placing players in professional leagues on 4 different continents. Our annual revenue was approaching 8 figures. I had offices in 3 major cities, a staff of 40 employees, relationships with team executives across the globe. But I was not satisfied. Not even close. Because Rick Donnelly was still out there. Still coaching high school basketball. Still crushing the dreams of young athletes who reminded him too much of me. Every success felt hollow as long as he remained untouchable. As long as his smug dismissal of my potential went unanswered. Then last winter, opportunity knocked in a way I never could have predicted. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in January, cold and gray outside my downtown office. Snow falling heavy against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Maya, you need to see the sports section today. My assistant's voice was tight with excitement. She knew my history, knew the story that drove everything I did. The headline made my heart stop. Local semi-pro team up for sale. Longtime coach seeking new ownership. The Riverside Hawks. My hometown team. The semi-professional franchise that had been struggling for years to find stable ownership and consistent funding. And there, quoted extensively in the article, was Coach Rick Donnelly. He had taken over as head coach 3 years earlier when the previous coach retired. The team had been mediocre under his leadership. Average attendance. Forgettable seasons. The kind of franchise that barely registered on anyone's radar. But they were for sale. The current owners were tired of losing money, tired of dealing with the headaches of running a small market professional team. The asking price was substantial but not impossible, especially for someone who had spent 15 years building a sports empire specifically for moments like this. I made the call that afternoon. This is Maya Sterling from Sterling Sports Management. I understand the Hawks are for sale. The negotiations took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of financial audits and legal reviews and due diligence reports. 6 weeks of barely sleeping. Of pacing my office at 3 in the morning. Of double-checking and triple-checking every number. Because this was not just a business transaction. This was destiny. When I signed the papers on a frigid March morning, I became the youngest team owner in the league. The first female owner in the franchise's history. The press conference was surreal. Reporters asking about my vision for the team, my plans for the upcoming season, my thoughts on the challenges facing small-market professional sports. I answered their questions professionally, diplomatically, but inside, I was thinking about only one thing. Rick Donnelly had no idea what was coming. I let him find out the same way everyone else did. Through the morning news. Former benchwarmer buys hometown team. The story ran on every local sports channel. Every newspaper, every blog. They interviewed my former teammates, my old teachers, anyone who remembered the quiet girl who used to sit at the end of the bench during high school basketball games. But the interview I was waiting for, the one that would make all of this worthwhile, came 3 days later. Rick Donnelly, standing in front of his office at the high school, looking older than I remembered, grayer, more tired. The reporter asked him about me. About whether he remembered coaching me all those years ago. Oh yeah, I remember Maya. She was a hard worker. Good kid. I am happy to see she found success in the business side of sports. Good kid. That was it. No acknowledgement of the cruel words. No recognition of the damage he had caused. Just casual dismissal. Even now. The reporter pressed further. Coach Donnelly, you are currently the head coach of the Hawks. How do you feel about your former player now being your boss? The expression on his face was priceless. Pure shock. Like he had been slapped by an invisible hand. I had no idea she was. That is certainly unexpected. Unexpected. 15 years of planning. 15 years of building. 15 years of turning his rejection into rocket fuel. And it was unexpected. My first official act as team owner was scheduling a meeting with the coaching staff. I chose the date carefully. Exactly 20 years to the day since that district championship game. since he told me I was not cut out to lead. The Hawks' offices were smaller than I expected, cramped and outdated, the kind of facilities that screamed small-time operation. But they were mine now. Every square inch, every decision, every dollar. Rick Donnelly arrived 15 minutes early. I watched him through my office window as he sat in the waiting area, fidgeting with his hands, checking his watch, trying to look confident but failing miserably. When I finally called him in, the look on his face was everything I had imagined it would be. 20 years had changed both of us. I was wearing a tailored business suit that cost more than his monthly salary. My hair was professionally styled, my makeup flawless. I carried myself with the quiet confidence of someone who owned the room. He looked smaller somehow, like the authority he had wielded over teenage girls had shrunk him instead of empowering him. "Coach Donnelly, please have a seat." My voice was calm, professional, but beneath the surface, my heart was pounding like a war drum. I have to say, this is quite a surprise. Congratulations on your success." "Thank you. I have worked very hard to get here." The silence stretched between us like a tightrope. He was waiting for me to reveal my intentions, to show my hand. I let him wait. "So, what are your plans for the team? Any major changes in mind?" I opened the folder on my desk. 20 years of preparation had led to this moment. "Actually, yes. I have quite a few changes in mind, starting with a complete evaluation of our current coaching staff." His face went pale. "I see. And what kind of evaluation are we talking about?" I leaned back in my chair, studied his face, watched the fear creep into his eyes. "Well, Coach, you see, I believe very strongly in giving opportunities to people who have been overlooked, athletes who have been told they are not good enough, players who have been benched by coaches who could not see their potential." The blood drained from his face completely. He knew. In that moment, he finally understood. "Maya, if this is about high school, I want you to know." I held up my hand, stopped him mid-sentence. "This is not about high school, Coach. This is about results. This is about building a championship culture. This is about leadership." I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the empty arena where his team would play. "You see, I learned something very important over the past 20 years. Leadership is not about being the biggest or the loudest or the most intimidating person in the room. It is about seeing potential where others see problems. It is about believing in people when they stop believing in themselves." I turned back to face him. Let the weight of my words settle in. It is about giving people chances, instead of taking them away. The meeting lasted another 30 minutes. We discussed budgets and roster moves and marketing strategies, professional topics, business decisions. But the real conversation had happened in those first few moments. When Rick Donnelly finally understood that the girl he had dismissed, the player he had kept on the bench, was now the person who controlled his entire professional future. I did not fire him immediately. That would have been too easy, too quick. Instead, I did something far more poetic. I made him prove himself, just like he had made me sit on the bench and watch others get opportunities one deserved. "Coach, your contract is up for renewal at the end of this season. I am going to evaluate your performance based on very specific metrics: team improvement, player development, community engagement." I slid a document across the desk. "These are my expectations. Meet them, and we will discuss a new contract. Fall short." I did not need to finish the sentence. We both knew what falling short would mean. For the first time in his coaching career, Rick Donnelly was the one being evaluated, the one whose future hung in the balance, the one who had to prove he deserved to be there. The irony was delicious. But I was not finished. Not even close. My next move was bringing in new players, athletes who reminded me of myself, overlooked talents who had been dismissed by coaches just like Rick Donnelly. I signed a point guard who had been cut from 3 different teams for being too small, a forward who had been told he was not athletic enough, a center who had been criticized for being too emotional on the court. Each signing was deliberate. Each player was a message. This is what happens when you give people chances instead of taking them away. The team started winning. Not just games, but hearts. The community fell in love with these underdogs who played with chip on their shoulder intensity. Attendance doubled, then tripled. Sponsorship deals that had been impossible to secure suddenly became competitive bidding wars. The local media started calling it the Sterling effect. The transformation of a forgotten franchise into something special. And Rick Donnelly, the man who had told me I was not cut out to lead, was forced to coach the team I had built, using the players I had chosen, following the philosophy I had implemented. Every victory was a reminder. Every packed arena was evidence. Every success story was proof that his judgment had been wrong. The season finale was scheduled for a Saturday night in April. Perfect weather. Sold-out crowd. The kind of atmosphere that makes professional sports magical. We were playing for the league championship, a title that had eluded the franchise for over a decade. I arrived at the arena 3 hours before game time. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to savor every moment. The parking lot was already filling up. Families tailgating. Kids wearing Hawks jerseys. The buzz of a community that had rediscovered its love for basketball. Inside, the arena had been transformed. New banners. Updated facilities. Premium amenities that made our small market team feel big league. But the most important change was not visible. It was the culture. The belief. The confidence that radiated from every player. Every staff member. Every fan. Rick Donnelly found me in my office 2 hours before tip-off. Maya, I just wanted to say, regardless of what happens tonight, this has been an incredible season. What you have built here. It is remarkable. I looked up from my game notes. Thank you, Coach. The team has responded well to your leadership. He shifted uncomfortably. We both knew the truth. His leadership had been adequate at best. The real transformation had come from the top down. From ownership that believed in second chances and unlimited potential. I know our relationship got off to a complicated start. I hope you know that I have nothing but respect for what you have accomplished. Respect. The word hung in the air between us. 20 years earlier, he had shown me the opposite of respect. Dismissal. Contempt. Casual cruelty disguised as tough coaching. But I was not the same person who had begged him for a chance to play. I was not the heartbroken teenager whose dreams he had crushed with thoughtless words. I was Maya Sterling, team owner, business executive, the woman who had turned his rejection into the fuel for building an empire. Coach, I appreciate that. I really do. I stood up, straightened my blazer, checked my reflection in the window. But tonight, let us just focus on winning a championship. The game was everything you could want from a championship finale. Back and forth scoring, incredible individual performances, momentum swings that had the crowd on their feet for minutes at a time. But for me, the real victory was not happening on the scoreboard. It was happening in the stands, where Rick Donnelly's wife sat in the section I had personally reserved for coaching staff families, where his children wore Hawks merchandise that I had provided, where his future depended entirely on decisions I would make. It was happening on the court, where players he had initially dismissed were making game-changing plays, where athletes he had underestimated were proving their worth on the biggest stage. It was happening in the press box, where reporters were documenting the transformation of a franchise under female ownership, where my story was being written in real time. With 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, we were down by 3 points. Timeout. The crowd was deafening. Players were exhausted. The championship was hanging in the balance. I watched Rick Donnelly huddle with the team. Watched him draw up plays on the whiteboard. Watched him try to inspire athletes to perform beyond their perceived limitations. The irony was stunning. The man who had never believed in giving overlooked players a chance was now depending on them to save his career. When play resumed, something magical happened. Our point guard, the one who had been cut for being too small, stole the ball and scored on a fast break. Our forward, the one who had been told he was not athletic enough, grabbed a crucial rebound and made both free throws. Our center, the one who had been criticized for being too emotional, blocked the game-winning shot attempt with 8 seconds left. We won by 4 points. The arena erupted. Players celebrated. Fans rushed the court. And I stood in my owner's box, watching 20 years of planning reach its perfect conclusion. The championship celebration lasted until 3 in the morning. Players, coaches, front office staff, community leaders, everyone who had been part of this incredible season came together to savor a moment that would be remembered forever. But the moment I had been waiting for, the conversation that would complete my journey, came the next morning. Rick Donnelly knocked on my office door at 9 a.m. sharp. He looked tired but determined, like a man who had spent the entire night preparing for the most important conversation of his professional life. Maya, we need to talk about my contract. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same chair where we had first met as owner and coach, where the power dynamic had shifted so dramatically from our high school days. Of course. Please sit down. He was carrying a folder. Notes, probably statistics and achievements he hoped would convince me to keep him on. But before he could open it, I slid my own folder across the desk. Coach, this is a 3-year contract extension. Significant salary increase. Performance bonuses tied to playoff success and community engagement metrics. His eyes widened. Maya, this is incredibly generous. I was not expecting. You were not expecting me to believe in you? The question stopped him cold, made him look up from the contract, made him really see me for perhaps the first time since I had become his boss. You see, coach, over the past year, I have watched you adapt, grow, learn to work with players that other coaches had given up on. And you know what I discovered? I leaned forward, let the weight of the moment settle between us. You are actually a pretty good coach. When you stop focusing on who players are supposed to be, and start focusing on who they actually are. He stared at me, processing, understanding. Maya, I need to say something. About high school. About the way I held up my hand. Coach, that was 20 years ago. We are different people now. I am more interested in the future than the past. But that was not entirely true. The past had shaped everything. The past had made this moment possible. Sign the contract. Coach Donnelly, let us build something even better next season. As he signed his name, I thought about the 17-year-old girl who had begged him for a chance to play, who had been told she was not cut out to lead. She could never have imagined this moment, could never have dreamed that rejection would become the foundation for everything she built. But she would have been proud, so incredibly proud. 6 months later, I was standing courtside before our season opener. The arena was packed again. Season ticket sales had increased by 400%. Corporate sponsorships were at an all-time high. We had been featured in 3 national magazines as a model franchise for small market success. But the moment that made everything worthwhile came during player introductions. The public address announcer called my name. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the owner of your Hawks, Maya Sterling. I walked to center court. The crowd rose to their feet. 20,000 people cheering for the girl who used to sit at the end of the bench. As I waved to the crowd, I spotted him in the stands. Rick Donnelly, sitting in section 212, row F, seat 14. He was not coaching anymore. His contract had been renewed, but he had decided to step down, to pursue other opportunities, to start fresh somewhere else. But tonight, he had bought a ticket to watch the team play. The man who had once told me I was not cut out to lead was now paying to watch the team I owned. As our eyes met across the arena, he nodded. A small gesture, but it meant everything. It meant acknowledgement, recognition, respect. It meant that sometimes, the best revenge is not revenge at all. It is proving them wrong so completely, so undeniably, that they have no choice but to finally see who you really are. My name is Maya Sterling. I was benched by a coach who said I would never lead. Now, I own the team. And that is how you turn rejection into revolution. If this story inspired you, if it reminded you that your dreams are bigger than anyone else's doubts, then please subscribe to our channel, because we have so many more stories of triumph, of resilience, of people who refuse to let others define their limitations. Hit that subscribe button and join us on this incredible journey of transformation.